360 TV proudly presents Messages of Inspirational Stories, broadcasting and live streaming to millions of devices around the world, including Roku, and live streaming to Facebook Live. Also on Amazon Fire TV and to Twitch. Also Android TV and Periscope. Broadcasting to Apple TV and YouTube Live. Proudly brought to you by our host, Donna Guinois, producer and host, Michaela Vidal, host and administrator, and Jim Grant, producer and host. Proudly brought to you by the 6minutewebinar.com. And welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. The Messages of Inspirational Stories is proudly brought to you today by the good guys at the 6minutewebinar.com. And if you notice when we go live, Donna's usually giggling or smiling because she's so happy to be here. And I tell you what, Donna, the shows we've been putting on recently have just really been a blessing to a lot of people. And we're continuing that tradition today. About this week is about freeing yourself from addiction. And, you know, Donna, there's all kind of addictions out there, isn't there?
There's just about every kind of addiction you can think of. It's out there. But,
yeah.
I mean, there are people who, are addicted to a certain color even. I mean, it really gets finite, if you will. But, I guess some major addictions that I think affect us, and all addictions affect everybody. But it seems, Jim, and these are tough stories. First, let me back up and say, this is a tough thing to talk about, addictions.
Yes, it is.
It is not a pleasant subject. It is not. But I think it is one that we feel strongly enough about to bring to surface and to share what we know and what information that we can give to people. Addictions, unfortunately, Jim, as you well know, they don't just affect the addict. The outreach is huge. It touches everybody. It touches the family, but it even goes further than that, Jim. I mean, I have some data here from the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and that drug driving is 10 to 20% of drug driving is involved with any car crash. Violence, half of the people arrested for major crimes, including homicide, theft, and assault, were under the influence. And, 2/3 of patients in rehabs say that they were physically or sexually abused as children. So the outreach of any kind of addiction, unfortunately, has tentacles, right? And it even touches more than the immediate family. For somebody who's drug driving and they get in an accident and hurt somebody else, that person who's involved touches a complete stranger's family.
Oh, yeah. It goes back to that thing when you were talking, what came to my mind. We know there's only two emotions on planet Earth. There's fear and there's love. Right. And if you do things in a negative way, it's going to domino out there and it's going to affect a multitude of people. You may not realize that, but it's true. The same thing is true with love because that comes from the universe. Right. That comes from the creator of the universe, and it's in abundance. It's more abundant than the sunlight is. My point being is that when you're doing something negative like drugs, and like Donna was saying, the outreach of it, it's a very negative vibe that you send off, and it just keeps dominoing and going out there because it really hurts a lot of people. And you think about all of the evil things and the wrong things in life that happen to innocent people, especially children, my goodness, it just really impairs good judgment and everything else. It really does.
It does. And, of course, we understand that it is a disease.
Oh, yeah.
It is a disease, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it was easy to stop, we wouldn't have the issues in the world. But in the United States, here in the United States that we do,
Mm-hmm.
This is really scary. The substance abuse is so costly, Jim, that it costs more than $484 billion per year.
That is amazing. $484 billion per year. And that's just probably, is that globally or just here in the States?
I don't know. This is National Institute for Drug Abuse, so I'm not sure.
Either way you slice it, that's just incredible.
Right. But that costs include health care, lost earnings associated with a crime, accidents. But I would like to add something to that statistic. It's not 100% accurate, because I promise you, there are thousands and thousands and thousands and more thousands than I know about, whose families have been affected by somebody who is a drug addict, who has stolen from them, they've lost time for, trying to help them, run them to a rehab, get them to court, whatever the case may be, that has not been reported. Promise you. But here's what's so scary is with that number, 484 billion per year, they also noted that diabetes costs only 131.7 billion annually, and cancer 171.6 billion. Now, I don't know the year on that. I looked and looked and looked and I could not find it, but it can't be altogether that old is my guess. It can't be altogether that old.
Absolutely.
So that's some pretty staggering numbers right there.
It's shocking is what it is, Donna. It really, truly is. And here in America, we've known that for decades, our government has declared war on drugs and this and that, and they've thrown, I don't know how much money at it. I mean, you could probably pave a road from here to the moon and back. And my point being is that money is not the answer to any of our problems. Sometimes we think it is. Money can make your life easier, of course, but it can't buy happiness. It can't buy love. And most importantly, with all the money's been spent on the war on drugs, why is drugs still such a major problem in our country, especially with our youth?
Right.
And they've been misled. They don't realize the danger. That's just part of being young, And so that's got to start at home. That's got to start from a grassroots effort from the family, the people next door that have a rapport with, your kids. It's got to become more talked about, the harmful effects. I remember reading one story, this man and his wife, and they had 3 kids, very successful, just a picture of a perfect family, if there is, which there isn't, but I mean, a good family photo of them. And the wife goes to a party with her friends, and there was some cocaine there. And she had never tried cocaine, never tried any type of drug or anything like that. And she just, did it just to fit in with her friends and have a little fun, harmless fun. And whammo, one time, ladies and gentlemen, she's hooked. And a long story short, of course, the husband found out about it. And for her to support her habit, she had to walk the streets as a common prostitute. And he had to end up divorcing her. And that one snort of cocaine, she lost her family, she lost her kids, she lost her life.
Right.
And I don't know what the end result was for her, whether she got help or eventually got straightened out or not. But I mean, gosh, that is such a deep, dark hole to go into. And it's not easy to get out of it. Go ahead.
No, it's not. It's not, Jim. You know, the way that drugs affect a family. So I wrote some notes, and I'll just add, I unfortunately am a little bit of a subject matter expert on this. So
Yes.
I have a child who has, well, that child will always be an addict, but you know, has fought this, and I've, you know, been in the throes of it with my child since the beginning. But here's some of the things that happen when when anybody becomes an addict. So your peaceful, loving home will become divided by the strain of drug abuse. Fights become commonplace. Lack of sleep. Trust within the family begins to wither away. Uh, Secrecy of drug users becomes commonplace. And trust me on this one, folks, they become a subject matter expert at manipulation to family members to get what they want. There is nobody better at manipulation than a drug addict trying to get, you know, money or whatever it is that they need. Side effects, some of the other things that affect the entire family is withdrawal. Okay. It's strained family ties, financial hardships, theft of money or anything of value that can be sold to support their habit.
Wow.
Mood swings, anxiety in the parents and siblings. Siblings. Now, this is one that is not talked about a lot, but I promise you it's out there. Siblings hiding sibling addiction under the sibling code. Okay. Sort of like that bro code, you know, it's a sibling code that, you know, we're going to protect them, and we're going to take care of our sibling, and we're not going to say anything because we got this. And unfortunately, that is just too big a burden for children to carry of another child. But it does happen. It does happen. Trust me on this one. Yeah. Here's the other thing is they have inability to hold a job. They get weird eating habits. Of course, sleeping habits become weird. They also can become unclean. They shut down communication, Jim. Inability to reason or hear that they have a problem or how it's affecting the other family members. And the saddest part about drug addiction, or any kind of addiction for that matter, is it becomes their best friend. Because addiction at its core is only about one thing. Their best friend is there because they have an emotion, something that is bothering them deep, deep down, and they can't deal with it. They can't deal with it up here on the surface. So addiction becomes their hideaway friend, if you will. It hides the core of the problem. And until an addict is at their very lowest, I mean, rock bottom, then unfortunately, you can do anything you want to do to try and help an addict, but it won't help, because the bottom line is they have to want that help. They have to get up one day, look in the mirror, and say, I am so damn sick of living like this. And if I don't change what I'm doing, this is as good as I'm going to ever have for the rest of my life.
Wow. You know, Donna, there's something that there was drug abuse in my family. I never have mentioned it. And this was not intentional. It wasn't for recreational or anything like that. What happened was my father was a lineman. He worked on these power poles and stuff. And this was back in 1954. And before they even wore rubber gloves or fiberglass helmets, I mean, they just wore, you know, just regular railroad caps and stuff like that.
Right.
And the way he always did it, he said he had seen a couple of guys get electrocuted on the pole. And he says, every time they told me a line was dead, if I reached up and grabbed it just like that, they'd start doing something with the line with that much voltage, which is that time, I think it was 72,000 which is
Right.
a lot of voltage, your muscles will clamp. You're dead instantly.
Right.
And he'd actually helped to get him, one guy off of a guy he worked with on the same crew, get him off of the pole. So Dad would always just take his back finger here and just hit that wire like that.
Tap it.
And yeah, and that's what he did. And 72,000 volts went through his system, entered his right knuckle here on his middle finger, crossed over his body, which is bad, went down the left side, his leg, and the Red Wing climbing boot that's double leathered and real tough for those hooks and all to wear those hooks. It burned a hole through that leather boot right where his bunion was, right behind his left big toe. And I remember as a kid, I don't know why I did it, but I remember as a kid, I could take a nickel and stick through that hole. That's how much fire came out of there. And his knocked him off the, his hooks and everything out of the pole. And he comes sailing down about halfway and his hooks caught. And of course, the sway that his back went through, it tore up his back badly. And he got hooked on barbiturates in the hospital. Mm-hmm. And there's people who get on addiction from medication, from injury or something of this nature, or recovery or whatever. And he was hooked on barbiturates. He called them his sleeping pills. During the day, you couldn't tell it. But at nighttime, he had to have his sleeping pills. He says, my back is killing me. My nerves cry for it. That's the way he described it to me. He says, I tried to quit barbiturates one time. But he says, son, I couldn't.
Right.
My nerves cried for it. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was in the hospital, having operations and stuff like that, to put you on codeine. And codeine's it gives you a nice buzz. I'm not going to lie to you. But I said, no, I better shut off of that stuff, because I saw what my dad went through. Right. And I figured, if it's a little painful, I'd rather tough it out, because once the pain is gone, I'm still, I won't be hooked on anything.
Right.
Yeah, because drug addiction like that, of course, back in the 50s when it happened to him, in the 60s on up to his death in the 70s, the help for drugs was just not there.
No.
Nowadays, the drug addict does have help, but it's like the old proverb: you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And I think that's one of the hardest things for families to go through. Say,
well,
hey, we got help. Go ahead, please.
It is, Jim, and I can tell you, from experience that peer pressure, number one, is horrible for young children. My child was on a medicine prescribed from his pediatrician, and the pediatrician had given him it was for ADHD, trying to think. And unfortunately, it was a number one narcotic. So that was almost an instant addiction.
Yes.
And then when you start hanging around older people who know a little bit more about drugs, and one thing leads to another, and there you go. But, I, as a mother, and, I was a single mother, I'm also trying to protect my other children, but I have gone through the gamut. I've helped this child through rehab. I've driven him out of state to a rehab, because not, at least back then, you couldn't, rehabs weren't just right around the corner.
Right.
So,
right.
I've actually had to go toe to toe with drug dealers at my house.
Whoa.
And
that's the worst people on planet Earth. You want your front door, because usually they're armed and dangerous, right?
The worst person at the front door was Mom.
No, you weren't the worst person. You were the baddest person. Mom is locked and loaded, and you better watch out, because you're downrange, and we're not going to go any further than that right there.
But it's very sad. It changes the way they think.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, it changes their thought process. And too much drugs will change literally and damage I believe it's the frontal lobe.
Right.
Okay.
You're correct.
Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Where they have their cognizant reasoning and cognizant thinking. And
Mm-hmm.
so they tend to, long drug abuse can scatter the way they think. They think that they're thinking logically, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah.
Lack of sleep. I can't tell you how much lack of sleep I've had over years of, trying to help my child or being worried about my child. I've also done those hard things where I kicked my child out of the house. We're done.
Yeah.
I still have other children that I need to protect. And I didn't feel that I could protect my other children with, a person who's on drugs.
And I was going to say something when you mentioned it, it kind of came to my mind earlier, that whenever, the siblings will cover for one another, think
Sibling
about
code.
Sibling code. Yeah. Think about the pain that the other siblings would go through if they covered for the one and that one ODs and dies.
Right.
Think about the burden that they would have to bear then. My goodness, it's horrible. Something else too, Donna, back when I used to drink back in the 70s, sometimes I just need a beer to unwind. And there's no such thing as a beer. I don't care who you are. That's the biggest lie. Let's go out and get a beer. Yeah, okay. That's the biggest lie in the world. And I look back now, and of course, I joke with people sometimes, and because I've got a sense of humor, warped sense of humor. I'll say, well, when I did drink, I would only drink on one of two occasions. When I was by myself or when I was with my friends. But, the point I wanted to make there was that it's so easy of an escape to not deal with something that's aggravating you and say, you know what, I think I'll just go have a beer. That's an easy escape. It's also the coward's door out to escape from reality. That's what I was guilty of.
Right. It takes a lot to go through it, because whoever you are, whatever kind of addiction you have, you are going through to get to the other side and say, I no longer like myself. I can't live this way. You have issues with, low self-esteem, but then a lot of times, let's be honest, it follows up with legal fees, right?
Oh, yeah.
And those aren't cheap, whether, or whether you end up doing time in prison. Right? I mean, that happens. And, it happens and can happen in any family. I will be very honest. When my children were young, I was adamant about talking to them about drugs, and that drugs were bad, and that what kind of drugs were out on the street at that time. And, for whatever reason, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Peer pressure, I can tell you, it was one of the number one things with children in high school and junior high. Let's go ahead and try it. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Come on, Johnny, don't be a wimp.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those deals where, if kids are taught at home and at school, and I know they have, programs at school and all that, but it really needs to be taken up a notch on all levels about the harmful effects, and say no to drugs. I mean, we used to see that advertisement, but we don't see it anymore.
No.
That's like, that's like drive friendly.
Right.
I mean, I get a kick out of, I don't watch them. I've seen a couple, about 4 or 5 actually, of these road rage things. And the ones that I've seen, I'm not a subject matter expert on road rage, but my point being, the ones that I have seen, someone's trying to merge in, and the person in this car here They don't want to let that person in. They want them to hit the brakes and get behind them, and they'll speed up. And then there's two, attitudes get, tempers flare and all that and end up in road rage. And it's always the other guy's fault. Well, any police officer will tell you when there's an accident, both people are at fault to some degree.
Right.
And it may be 99-1 or it may be 80-20, but both people are guilty. They cite the one that was the guiltiest. But my point being in sharing that with you is that we need to clean up our act in this country,
Right.
in America. We really, truly do on all fronts. And we need to start with our kids, teaching them in school, about the harmful effects of drugs and the peer pressure, and share with them some real life stories and bring in some people who have been down that road, who can say, this was my life. This was my prison I built for myself. This was my living hell that I existed in, because that's what it is.
It is. It really is. And it's a living hell for everybody around it, Jim.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
As a parent, you try to help your child, and I quote unquote help. You try and help your child, but what you end up doing is enabling them, because you're really trying to help them. And you think, well, if I just do this, and what did I do wrong? And what. And it comes down to the point that when they are under the age of 18, yes, it is our job and our duty to do everything within our power to help that child. But also knowing that after 18, of course, you still want to help your child, I mean, otherwise, what kind of monster would you be not wanting to help your child, to be honest with you?
Absolutely.
However, with that being said, there comes that point in time when you have to stand up and say, enough. We have a life. I will no longer enable, this person whom I love with all my heart, my child, or whoever it is, because when you enable them, they won't take responsibility for their own actions.
Yeah. You still leave too big of an escape door for them.
Right. Absolutely. Now, one of the other things I would like to talk about briefly, Jim, is understanding that where you live is also pertinent in understanding what drugs are closest to you. Now, drugs are everywhere, right? But the reason I say that, we all know that the cartels hold, do the drugs, right? But at one of the El Paso sector of Border Patrol, since 2018, fentanyl has an increase of 4,000% in our country. Now, fentanyl, for those of you who don't know, fentanyl is used in surgeries. I had fentanyl when I had all three of my brain surgeries. Of course, the first and the last one, I wasn't out, but I was loopy. I was very relaxed. The second main brain surgery, I was completely out. And let me tell you what, this stuff is strong. They have you count from like 10, and I'm like, 10, not, and that was all I remember. So it just takes literally a minuscule amount of fentanyl to overdose on. One of the problems that is going on right now is fentanyl is being laced in heroin. Heroin on its own is bad enough as it is, but it's being laced. Right? So understanding what is around you, border states, we get a flood of it. Jim, you're in Texas. Y'all get a flood of drugs there. I'm in Arizona. We get a boatload flood here.
Oh, yeah.
And it comes in like crazy. So understanding what's around you. Also, one of the things, for those of you who may be going through it and they're not 100% sure, when your child's behavior starts to change, that is your red herring. They can start eating differently. Their mood swings change.
Mhm.
They get quiet if they were pretty talkative. They, really become more reclusive and keep to themselves. So understanding the signs of something deeper, and it's okay to err on being wrong rather than and have them mad at you, rather than err on, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings, and they end up ODing.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's really bad because, I mean, youth does not realize the dangers in life. They just don't. I mean, when you're a teenager, you're young, you think you're bulletproof. You think,
Invincible.
yeah, I mean, you got the world in your hip pocket, and like I tell people, when I graduated from school, our graduating class, we kind of we didn't say it, but we kind of had the attitude, we can go out now, we can set the world on fire, baby.
Right?
I'm glad we didn't. you know, oh my goodness. That was, I'd still be, we'd still be shoveling ashes over that stuff.
Right? We were,
Making trips.
we weren't
Oh
just
yeah.
we weren't just the party mix. We were the whole party mix.
There you go. There you go. There you go. And when you think about the war on drugs and what we're trying to do here to stop the influx of drugs coming into the country, that's the wrong way to handle it. It really is, in my opinion. I know a lot of folks out there would disagree with me, because if we educate our kids and get a movement going with our kids to say no to drugs, if there's no money, nobody buying it, they're going to be shipping it up here,
Right.
They really aren't. And I mean, I know that's a pipe dream type of a scenario, but I mean, rather than just, trying to keep it away from them.
They have to go hand in hand, Jim.
Yes, you're correct. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we seem to be fighting it just on one front.
Mm-hmm.
But if we fought it from the other way and reduced the demand, well, they're not going to send drugs up here for nothing or for very little, And
Right.
that was the point. And but
Absolutely.
we just don't do that.
Right.
We're so busy in trying to teach them all these things in school that really is not a benefit or a blessing to society.
Right.
I mean, it really is. I'm not trying to get on anything political or anything like that. I'm just saying that our youth, my goodness gracious, I look back now and I realize how blessed and fortunate I was.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I went in the Army when I was still young, Like I tell people, I went in the Army when I was young and good looking. And I say, I was young once. I'm not making this up. And my point being is that I had a lot of good, strong leadership in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Army and military in general, let me just finish this right quick, Donna, please.
No, I was just going to say the Army and the military is an incredible way to grow you up real quick.
It is. You know why? Because some guys, they're still attached to their mama in a lot of ways. The Army will make them snip at a umbilical cord. And
real quick.
Yeah, because a lot of young men today, one of the complaints that a lot of young ladies have is that men don't act like men. Sure, they want a woman. Yes. They want a honey. Yes. They want a girlfriend. Yes. But in reality, during the day, they also want her, the girlfriend, to kind of take care of him like his mama did.
Right.
And help pay for his bills. Come on, guys. Grow up, man up, stand up, pay your own way, I mean, treat her like a princess in public and a sweetheart at home. But when it's daytime, get it up, get it in gear, and go earn your keep, pay the bills,
Well, I think too, Jim, one of the things that we don't think about is when our children are quite young, is starting that open conversation that you can come talk to me. If somebody's bothering you, you come talk to me. Okay. And opening that dialogue and building that foundation for trust. That so when somebody says, mommy, Jimmy in their third or fourth grade offered me something that didn't look right, that you can be calm, but take care of it. Because if, as a society, we want to keep our children as long as we can, right? And let them have that youthful experience of being a child and that wonderment of being a child. But the reality is, in today's world, that's a lot less than what it was 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, no kidding.
40 years ago, 50 years ago.
I believe it's me and Michaela were on, and we were talking about kids and things of this nature. And one of the most important things that I think parents could do, there's a lot of important things, but one of them is that let your kids know, especially your daughters, your girls, if they ever, because we've all, when you think back, all of us have went somewhere and then realized after we got there, I wish I hadn't come over here, I wish I was not here.
Right.
Yeah.
Wasn't a good idea.
Yeah. Kind of like Three Dog Night had that song back in the 70s. Mama told me not to come. But my point being is have a rapport with them, especially if you're a stepmother or stepfather, and just say, hey, I understand sometimes you can be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and deep down inside it's not a good place for you. All you have to do is call me. I'll come and pick you up. No questions asked.
Right.
And I won't say anything to your mother, or I won't say anything to your father. It'll be between me and you.
Right.
And to have that kind of rapport, and we've got a comment out here. Hey, I mispronounced his name correctly the first time yesterday. You want to give a shot at his name? I'm going to call him Mr. Bruno. He was with us yesterday.
Giordano.
Okay. Her pronunciation is a lot better than mine. But he was with us yesterday when we had Joel B. Peterson on, because Joel has got a tremendous story. And he works a lot with veterans and that suffer from PTSD and that sort of thing. Yes, Donna got it. So, Donna, you got a 1 and I got a big goose egg.
Well, unfortunately, and this is my experience as a parent, is that PTSD can happen as a result of major drug use.
Yes. It's not limited to combat.
Right. Is in all the things that they go through, because they are not yet dealing with that emotional issue that is causing them to seek escape through drugs.
Oh, yeah. It's so easy.
It is. And it's so hard. It'll tear up a family, Oh. I have laid awake more nights than I can count saying, what did I go wrong? Where did I go wrong? Did I not do something right? And it took me a long time to realize, no, I did everything right. I did everything right best I could. I remember, this isn't an overly pretty, it's not graphic by any means, but I remember when I took my child out of school, and there was a wait time between when I could get my child into rehab. And they were still under the influence, shall we say, and came upstairs and told me in no uncertain terms that I'm going to rip your head off because I'm going out that door to get drugs. And I said, well, child, if you're feeling froggy, you best leap now. So the child leapt and didn't leap too far. Let's just put it that way, because there was no way in God's green earth I was letting my child outside that door when they needed help. Yeah. It wasn't happening. And I remember during that time when my child would be asleep, that was when I would hurry up and go take a shower, because I wanted to make sure that I was awake, and when they tried to sneak out the door.
Mm. Yeah, because that's a very common problem when they're, when they're suffering from their addiction and they become a slave to it.
Right.
You actually become a slave to your addiction. And it goes back to that old thing in life that whatever we treasure in our hearts, that is what we serve.
It is.
It really, truly is. It's that simple. I mean, goodness. And I heard guys one time say, the only thing Satan will tempt you with is what you treasure in your heart. And I went,
That really hits.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't tempt me to rob a bank or do drugs or, hurt or harm anybody.
Right.
But the things that can push my hot button, I mean, it's kind of like a checkup from the neck up, as old Zig Ziglar would say.
Right.
And that's where Bill Heinrich really has been a blessing to me in my life. He taught me about let go of all the fear, let go of all the physical things, because where you're at right now is the perfect place for you. Mm-hmm. If you're a drug addict out there, if you're hooked on drugs and you're struggling, you're at the perfect place for you. Don't give up hope, because this is where you are right now, but this is not where you're going to be. And right. This is certainly not where you were created to be. Because once you're
created to stay.
Exactly. And whenever you let go of it, if you're worried about something or whatever the negative emotion is, just let it go. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to love myself first. I'm going to love others. And then when you call upon the universe for its power, this is what I want to do. And you find your calling in life, nobody can stop you.
Well, Jim, as a parent, I've gone through every emotional.
You've been through the full gamut.
I've been through it like nobody's business. And you know what? That did not help who I was at the time, because mm-hmm. you're so burdened down trying to help a child.
Yeah.
And you think, oh my gosh, what have I done wrong? I've let my child down. I didn't do this right, or I didn't do that right. And you know what? At the end of the day, what I learned, and it took years to learn this, it did not happen overnight. I did everything I could right. Maybe not everything was 100%, but you know what? Everything was 100% right. And when I learned that I did the best I could do as a parent, and I finally could step back from it, I could then see the picture much clearer in my child's drug abuse issue. And I could see answers clearer. Mm-hmm. Because I was not caught up in that physical part of it, right?
The turmoil
right.
of it.
And you have to get out of that to be able to, number one, it's like you've said before on the show, you can't, if you're on an airplane and the oxygen masks fall, you can't save your children if you don't first put the oxygen masks on you.
You're right.
You have to save yourself first, because you know what? You can't think clear in that state. So you have to be able to be where you can truly see this for what it is, and get help for your child, and be able to call that child out on the BS that comes with drug addiction or any kind of addiction.
Yeah.
Right?
You got to be on solid ground yourself before you can throw a tow rope someone else and pull them out of the mud. Right. But Donna, I've got your website up there, and I've got your email there, High Energy Right Now, because everyone that's listened to you in the past, and especially on this broadcast here, they knew and they know that you have really went through some tough. Yeah, it's kind of like, I like what you said there. It's kind of hard to see, because if you're in the middle of a whirlwind and everything is flying around, dust and all that, you can't see anything. You just feel the tremendous drain on you. But you have a program of helping people find their energy and rise back up. And I'd like for you to share that with the folks out there, if you would, please.
Absolutely. So my program literally evolved from my life, if you will, of living.
No,
Living,
I'm not laughing at you because I know the story, but it's true.
right,
It's true, ladies. This lady here has got skin in the game.
but literally living right in the middle of it. You know, when you have a child who has a severe addiction, that takes a lot out of you. You know, I still had other children to raise. They had other things that they were going through. Um, it was not an easy time. And then when I got sick, I was, they found an aneurysm in my head, and they were undergoing other tests on me at the time and to find out what was going on. And the day I found out, from about 2.5 months worth of tests, that I had MS was the same day that I was scheduled for the first of 3 brain surgeries. So those brain surgeries there was 3 of them in a 14-month time period. And the first and the third one, the first one was to see where it was, how bad it was, and what operation could be done for it. The second one was, of course, to put the shunt in. I call it a slinky because that's what it literally looks like, a little teeny baby slinky went in there. And then the third one was to see how well the surgery took for it. But those 3 surgeries, and having MS and dealing with everything that was going on, it took its toll, and it really kicked my butt. And there was some depression, and there was like, oh my gosh, what if something happens to me? What's going to happen to my children? And all of a sudden, you know, I wasn't 100% there because I couldn't speak well. The surgeries left my brain tired. They left my body tired. Because I was taking care of my children, the job I had at the time. 4 weeks after my main brain surgery, in that 4th week, I worked 114 hours. I was still black and blue and on from the surgery. I mean, I literally looked like I'd either been in a car accident or somebody had taken a baseball bat to me. I was so black and blue from the surgeries and the PICC lines and everything because I'd been on blood thinners. But I created high energy performance coaching. And basically I decided that I could be bitter or get better. And I decided to get better. And I dove into what was going on and why. And I actually charted it, and I did the root cause. And it comes down to 3 things: people, places, or things. It can be any one of them or all of them. But we tend to get stuck as humans. We tend to get stuck in something, and it causes us an anxiety and a depression and a negative way. And we don't realize it. And then all of a sudden, our life is kind of crappy because we don't know what's going on. But we can't pinpoint it because we're too close to the forest to see the trees. And that's where I come in. I help you identify it. I help you identify where it's at. And I give you tools and ways to get through it. And it's not a week-long program. It's a 3-month program. It takes 3 months to find it and truly identify it and completely get rid of it.
I like that because the program that you've got, it's a program designed to help you go and grow at your pace, but also helps you heal the emotions that you've been experiencing, you know, the things that's been, and deal with it and heal from that and grow from that. And because, you know, we live in a society where everybody wants a fast fix, you know.
Right.
If I get a sniffle, go to the doctor, get a bottle of pills, and tomorrow I'm great.
Right.
But that's not the way the world turns. I mean, it just doesn't, you know, turn that way. But to be able to, first of all, you know, admit that you got a problem and you need some good help. You've heard Donna. I've known her for a long time. She's the real deal. And if she can help you or counsel you or just give you some good advice, please give her an email. Send her an email at highenergyrightnow@gmail.com because Donna just, you know, she treats you. Sometimes she treats me like a mother, you know, that's just who she is, you know. even though I'm much older than she is, and a whole lot uglier, but we're not going to go there. I'm going to be
Well,
73 and tomorrow I'm going to be 73. Can you believe
I
that?
know.
Yeah.
And you, I
Yeah.
have to say, are one of my best, dearest friends in the whole world. Not only are you my business partner, Jim, but you are one of my dearest friends. And I say
Well,
that
thank
with
you.
all truth and honesty, folks. You know what? He says this about Dandy Don McGrath. He's a friend you never knew you wanted to have. Well, I can say the same thing about Jim.
Well,
Jim
thank you. It's
is
mighty kind.
absolutely the salt of the earth. He is not only smart and funny and wise, but he has a heart of the entire world. I have never known somebody who is more heart and more genuine love and compassion and kindness for everything, his fellow man, animals, it doesn't matter, than you, Jim. And I am so grateful that you're in my life.
Well, thank you. And Donna, the way we came together, it's two people's fault. One is Marty Haggard, and the second one's God. I got some friends overseas. They may not know who Marty Haggard is. Marty Haggard's a dear friend of ours. His dad, Merle Haggard, was the greatest country and western songwriter and singer this world has ever seen. And his dad was also a person of heart, because if it wasn't for his dad, Glenn Campbell would have never had his number one hit by the time we get to Phoenix ever put out there.
Right.
Merle Haggard was the catalyst behind that. And this is a little plug for some of you entrepreneurs out there. To finish up that story real quickly, Glenn was a backup guitar player on Merle's, a lot of his songs. And he had signed a deal with Capitol Records, same record company that Merle was with. And he says, I got this song and recorded it. And they're not doing anything with it. He says, how do you get your songs out there? He says, how do you get them going? He says, I don't depend on Capitol Records. Now, at this time, Merle Haggard had about 4 or 5 number one hits.
Oh, yeah.
He's already, he's top of the charts. He's already a major star. He says, oh, I don't worry. They do a good job. Yeah, but I don't wait on them. You entrepreneurs, listen to this. He says, that time is about 2,000 country and western stations throughout the United States. He told Glenn, he had Glenn play the song, and he said, wow, that's a number one hit. He told Glenn, go back to, because they were in Bakersville, California. He said, go back to L.A., bring me 2,000 singles, come back over here on that Saturday, and Merle and Glenn and Merle's wife, Bonnie at the time, and another person, they packed up these 2 records inside of one sleeve, and inside of each sleeve, Merle Haggard wrote a personal note, says, please, this is going out to the DJs, please give this record a spin, and whatever. So that's how it all happened. And both of those songs, I'm trying to remember what the song was it got sent with, but both of them shot to the chart. Number one.
Wasn't it
Merle on the Country?
Was it Okie from Muskogee?
No, Okie from Muskogee came out in 1969. It was before that. I'm trying to remember. But anyway, Merle's song went to number one. And, of course, on the pop charts, rock and roll station, we called it back then. By the time we went to Phoenix, you folks that's familiar with that song, you know what happened there. It shot up there number 1 and 2. He was an overnight, not overnight, but it was very quickly coming, what we call an overnight sensation. And point being, even though Merle Haggard had 4 or 5 number one hits, he's a major star. He didn't say, okay, I got another record I'm going to cut. I'm going to let Capitol, do all the work.
Right.
In his garage on a Saturday, he mailed out 2,000 copies of his brand new song to all of these DJs. That's a heck of a message for an entrepreneur, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. Well, and if you really want to get back down to basics, we can talk about Merle on another note. Merle, as we all know, was in prison.
Oh, yeah. He was no choir boy.
No, he was far from a choir boy. He went to prison. He did time. And Marty was actually born in, oh my
He was in
goodness,
it was a
in a
railroad car.
railroad
Yeah.
car, right?
A train.
So he got out of prison and he got his life straightened out. And he said, you know, I can't do this anymore. And he straightened his life out. He went from, as Marty likes to say, he went from the jailhouse to the White House. He went and it was invited to the White House with every president through, who was it? Up through,
I think it's Bush.
I think Bush. Yeah.
I think it was Bush. Yeah.
And
Sure was. Yeah.
he was asked to cut a special CD for the astronauts going into space.
Right. So Marty says my dad went from the jailhouse to the White House to the moon.
You're right. But
He
you know,
did.
so if he can do it, you know, and he got on the wrong side of the law. I mean, that's all it was to it. But he could have stayed there and it would have gotten worse for him. But honestly, it is a tough road, and I've been there. I get it. I understand what it's like to go through. And I also understand, you know, as much as I possibly can from an addict's point of view, having had a child who is an addict, but understand that there's hope. But one of the things you have to do is give yourself grace.
Oh, yeah.
You must give yourself grace. If you do not give yourself grace, it's going to be tough to get through it because it will test you at every corner, and it will test your relationship with your partner.
Oh, yeah. It's a stress puller that'll just pull you apart because you're going to feel like a rag doll in the mouth of a dog. I mean, you're just all over the place.
More like a saber-toothed tiger.
Oh, yeah. Because when it bites, it hurts. You know, it's just amazing because I was always embarrassed about my dad's drug problem there. And of course, his was prescription, and he would take, I used to count his bills because he took me to the drugstore with him one time and said, come on in with me. And this is before they used to monitor drugs because Dad would get his drugs from 3 or 4 places because he had to.
Right.
And I can't remember the guy's name. He was Rexall Gene something. He worked at Rexall Drug. And he says, told my dad, says, hey, you shouldn't need a refill yet. And my dad pointed to me and he says, oh, he was playing around with them there and he dumped them in the toilet or dropped them in the toilet. And that was a total lie. And it shocked me.
Right.
And that really affected my relationship with my dad for a long time because all the way through, he was always about walking tall, being true to your school. And then he tells a lie on me. And that really bothered me. And Carol just stopped in and said, hello. Hey, Carol, how you doing? Glad you joined us. But ladies and gentlemen, our time is just about gone. And I'm so glad that you joined with us. Most importantly, Donna and I'll be back tomorrow with the wrapping up this show, the messages that we have here on the Messages of Inspirational Stories. This week, we have covered freeing yourself from addiction. Oh, my goodness, Donna, we don't have too much time, but next week, we're going to be talking about visiting the 10 most popular places in the United States.
Yes.
And week after that, we're going to actually do Rennie Gabriel's entire week, his program of get out of debt and create wealth and do it at the same time. Because Rennie, he did that.
Oh, yeah.
Rennie came from what we call the post side of town.
Right.
And because he was having to go out and collect up aluminum cans and bottles and stuff like that, take them to the recycling center just to be able to, get money to buy groceries. And that's when you're poor. There's no doubt about that. And folks, our time is gone. Otherwise, they're going to bring the big hook in here and, pull me off. But Donna, it's been a wonderful show. You've just, shared a lot of great information. Most importantly, you've inspired people to, take a deep breath and relax and hang on, because that's what you did. And I got to salute you on that, young lady.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a journey, guys, but you'll get through it and you'll get stronger.
Oh, yeah. And if you need some high energy, be sure and get in touch with Donna at highenergyrightnow@gmail.com. And as our time is gone, and thank you so much for tuning in. On behalf of Donna and myself, we want to thank you for tuning in. If you're watching us on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, Android TV, Twitch, Periscope, where else? Oh, we're on Grandma's TV, aren't we?
Facebook,
Facebook, yeah.
YouTube,
LinkedIn, yeah. YouTube,
LinkedIn.
yeah. And we just sincerely hope that you have a wonderful night or day whenever you see this. Most importantly, be sure and love yourself first, then you can love others. On behalf of Donna, I'm Jim Grant and Donna Guinois. We'll be back tomorrow. Please tune in. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.